Good morning, LinkedIn friends, HubSpot Nation. Uh, Welcome to a special anniversary edition of Let's Build. And happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way, March 17th, 2025. Tomorrow marks 1 year after I started Let's Build. Started doing shows every day. Got something really exciting to share starting tomorrow, but wanted to take a minute to share the story behind what has happened, why I'm continuing to lean in hard on LinkedIn lives, live content showing up every day. I had a great chat with Rob Jones and Christopher Barnett on Friday about GTM strategy, and it, it's like the only thing you can control right now is whether you decide to show up every day or not. Um, Great story from Casey Hawkins, who stepped up to join me for the daily morning show, recently, and she's already being recognized as a top HubSpot voice. In the community, and she's only gone hard really like in the past couple months, and now she's doing LinkedIn lives outside of that show. And uh a little behind the scenes, which I don't think she'll mind me sharing, but like, you know uh uh it was not easy for us to come up with like a regular cadence, for Casey. Which is how it works for a lot of people. A few people that I'll share like go into, um, you know, put a daily hour on, or a weekly hour on the schedule, and just start showing up every week, and that's how it kind of built. We tried that once with Casey, wasn't the right time, um, but now here we are. She's crushing it, and so much of this is um, about like when you can't control right time, right place, like showing up every day is the only way to serve that. And I appreciate this comment. Sometimes I find about cool stuff in your talks that is not event relevant to the talk I'm currently listening. And that's the double-edged sword of watching my content, and but it's also why I know I bring something else to the table. It's the conversations go where they need to go based on what we're passionate about, based on whatever post we just saw or conversation we just had about a HubSpot pain, about a HubSpot opportunity, about business strategy. So much of this is about like just hearing these conversations from all these different stakeholders in the ecosystem happens to hit differently. It hits, and we can go through the work of like doing all this research and figuring out the exact phrases we need to use, and do all this planning and work to just prepare behind the scenes, and we go live, and then we realize we're not saying the same thing, or HubSpot has changed, or all these things out of our control. And I learned this from the admin hug, when product managers and Kyle and people who are showing up all the time still get surprised every day by their own product. Like, what hope do we have if we're trying to educate on HubSpot? So just embrace it, embrace the messy. And the fun part is when you just ask people, what are you passionate about? And that's what we'll talk about, right? It creates great content. It creates authentic takes. It creates um, meaningful like messages, right? Without too much like pre-planning. So I'll take you on the journey a little bit here, and we'll talk about the good and the bad of doing it in the way that I chose to do it, right? And this is an example. So thankfully, Aware is a platform I use to help understand that journey. And it's what I had to go to after using Google and LinkedIn to try desperately to find this first episode that I did on March 18th of last year. Let's see what happens when I click in. Yep, opens up right to the post. If you go hard on LinkedIn, like check out Aware for sure. I did an unboxing episode with Alex, um, and he's awesome. But let's take a stroll back. Have you ever wanted to sync properties in HubSpot without the workflows? And I realize I'm not sharing my screen. Uh, After 400 shows, you still make mistakes. That's okay. I'm going to share my screen now. There we go. Um, so, last year, have you ever wanted to sync properties in HubSpot without workflows? On today's shows, we'll be building a new property type called Sync Properties in HubSpot, which does just that. Uh, and I think this had, let's see, 813 impressions, right? But this was my first live event, and like shout out to Salim, my old partner, who helped me, set up the StreamYard that I'm using right now, and help take the edge off on actually being able to do this in the first place. Um, so this was one of those things that once it was implemented, like, all right, we got a bunch of workarounds that do this already. Do we have to undo them? Um, but it was fun. It was 12 minutes, I think. It's probably the shortest episode in the history, uh, which was, I think I set up this show to be like 10 to 15 minutes, just going to go build some stuff. But then I realized very quickly, it's not necessarily my style. Um, and also, like, uh, yeah, like you actually have to do more prep to make it shorter, right? And that just wasn't going to work for me if I wanted to show up every day. Uh, so, but gotta give props to the first one. And if you haven't seen it yet, a year later, we've got increased limits on sync properties as it's been combined with calculated properties. So, team's still doing great work there. Um, a second episode, and I won't go through all of them, hopefully, uh, was data model in 10 minutes, and I think it took 15. So that just gives you an idea of how the shows usually go. I can zoom in a little bit here, right? And as you see this, you're not going to see a lot of crazy numbers, right? Um, but that wasn't like I ascribed to what I learned from George. Like if we're just helping at least one person every time with their content, like that's value. And especially when you do it on LinkedIn, um, it's likely to be hitting 10 other people like that are lurking behind the scenes. And fast forward to inbound when I showed up in September, a lot of people I met that had never engaged with any content but had seen a lot of it or had seen some of it and sharing how impactful it was. So that's where it's like the only when you start to hear more and more things like that, you realize you just show up every day and like the value gets created, the value gets comes back. Uh so um another thing I wanted to mention, and like so as I got comfortable right after the first week, um I think let's see, we've got I wanted to like, okay, let's make it a thing. Let's make it repeatable. Let's create uh, this um, this themed, like theme days of the week. Let me see what this one is here. Uh, and it was going to be, yep, this is a good example. It's going to be data model Mondays and template Tuesdays and workflow Wednesdays and thought leader Thursdays and fan Fridays. And I was like, okay, I can. So I go through and I create, a new thumbnail that has, the days of the week and the theme things on it. And it's like, okay, this is what we're supposed to do from a marketing standpoint, like make it easier to understand what the value you're going to get and, which shows might be for you, which shows might not be for you. And I think I made it through 1 week of that. All right. Let's look at the end of that week. Um, and that was 28th. So we got through. See, I even got the naming convention started. Thought Leader Thursdays, Fan Fridays. Uh, and this was fun. This was the first time I think. Uh, nope. So soon after this, Alexia joined me, who was just on the found the kickoff event at the admin. What is an HubSpot admin um, panel? So that was cool to have her on. She's been on the show a couple times. Uh, uh, but next uh, the next week, opportunities arise, and George was starting something new, and we did a breaking news episode. Breaking news, right? And how about this for a new way to launch, something. We played a little fun with April Fool's Day, but this is when we talked about, George starting his new agency, going from George B. Thomas to, you know, Sidekick Strategies. Uh, and again, just creating the space um, to be heard, to share something new, to share something exciting that is valuable for the community, right? So immediately I'm like kicked out of this mode, this pre-planned mode, right? Because even when I tried to get back to it, right, it just didn't make sense as new updates showed up that I cared to talk about, right? HubSpot memberships was a huge deal when it came down to pro. Uh, and then this was the same day that Content Hub, launched last year. So immediately it was like, okay, this pre-planned schedule, this pre-planned theme, it's just not gonna work. Because no matter how hard I want to stick to it, like you have to actively talk about something else than the thing that you want to talk about, which is so hard. Like when you're trying to give value, when you want people to be aware of that thing, right? Um, so this was, I think, the first official unboxing episode, right? And behind this, actually not behind the scenes, right? Like if you want to get in touch, like one of the things I learned, like there is no better way to make connections and to network with people that you don't know, that you haven't met before, that you want to meet, right? Uh, and when I'm somebody who's invested in how what's going to happen with Content Hub and CMS tools and building portals for people, like I had Ankur Gupta, who's been on the show. um, Actually, we did I think it was our first show last month, unboxing the new podcast migrations tool, right? Or import tool, sorry. Um, and he found this because he was, listening for Content Hub related stuff. Um, and yeah, that was like an unlock for me, like connection to the product management team at HubSpot. Like, just like, when you think about podcasts and interviewing other people as the best way to start a relationship with them, like content-based networking. Um, Thank you, James Carberry, for bringing that out into the world in B2B context. Um, Sweetfish Media is where I started, my first podcast back in 2020. Um, same is true. Like product managers love unboxing episodes. I've heard from lots of them. Almost every time I do an episode on product update or on a product of HubSpot, I hear from the PM. They comment and they tell me they watch it a couple times because it's literally like an asynchronous feedback call that they're already having, right? So a couple times people have joined, product managers have joined. And thanks so much, uh, Mr. Bones, for your kind words here. Um, so I'm only into April of last year, so I better get get going. Um, Something else. So the next couple days were spent unpacking Content Hub, which was a big deal. It was the talk of the ecosystem. HubSpot was changing from CMS Hub to Content Hub, which guess what? Lots of education still needed there, like 1 year later. But it doesn't matter how great the tool set is if people don't know about it and they get confused about it. And that's a big reason I wanted to step up and say, hey, if we don't start talking about this stuff every day, we're never going to catch up with the updates. Right. Um, so uh, I think that one of the next interesting things that happened was because I started uh, doing this activity every day. Clement, who's going to be on a show with Casey later today, um, like within 2 or 3 months, I was on a experts to follow list on a post, and I always apologize to George to like I just started, and I'm on this list of HubSpot experts right next to somebody who's been doing it for 12 years. Like, it definitely feels like a cheat code. So, when you think about LinkedIn Live and whether you should do it or not and why it would be valuable for you, um, it is, imagine, like, rolling up to your local TV studio uninvited, just but you got the keys, or they just keep everything unlocked. You show up, you go inside, and you're like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna take this studio right here, and I'm just gonna start, filming my own show, and broadcasting." Cool. All right, that's LinkedIn Live. Like, and there's this weird thing that happens that, when I went to inbound and people were recognizing me for this work, I started realizing like it wasn't. It's cool to say that they see you all over LinkedIn and they recognize the beard and things like that. But I also was curious, like, I wonder if they're watching any of the content, because probably not, as I come to learn. But as I've talked about with Rob several times on Let's Build GTM, it's like that showing up, that power of just being recognized, like that's the first bar. Like it doesn't matter how targeted, how great your content is, if people don't recognize you in some way and your message is too good at targeting them, it's like, oh, what are they up to? What data do they have about me? Or here comes a pitch. All these things we've thought up to be like, that's not a great experience when you know me too well, right? Um, and uh, so it's not like it's a different kind of awareness, right? So it's powerful. And that's why I recommend anybody right now, if you can find a way to start creating content like this in the face of AI, like show and tell, this is who I am, this is how I talk, this is how I feel about things that are happening in HubSpot or with AI or whatever I'm passionate about helping you with as a consultant, coach, trainer, craftsman, creator, like however you want to look at it. If you can share your journey And Casey just mentioned on the morning show, like it's conversations that you're already having every day, whether it's a sales call, whether it's a internal training call with colleagues, whether it's a PM, feedback call, right? Find a way to get comfortable with sharing that openly, and all of a sudden, it's not such a burden, right? And when you show up live, it reduces the expectations of high production value. Anybody that shows up live is a bonus, right? And because the value is in consuming the content whenever it gets consumed. And that is one of the main things outside of our control, as customer facing teams. Yet we try so hard to control it with these big bang, 4 week, 8 week, 12 week campaigns that are all built around getting people to show up because we need the leads. But then there's technical difficulties. Then people get sick. Then people have things in their life that day. No matter how badly they wanted to show up live, they could not. Right. Uh, and so just removing that pressure, that expectation, goes such a long way. So I'm going to switch gears here, but highlight Absolute first. I mean, this is it. I bought camera mic this year. Just need a little bit of courage to press record. Well, if you want to do a Let's Build episode with me, I'm happy to help you with that courage. That is behind all of this. After doing about a quarter of this, yeah, I say on my own, but really, like, there was quite a few um, shows, if I can get to it here. Right. So this was the beginning, like when I decided, oh, I guess I better invest in StreamYard and start syncing like to YouTube, or start uploading. Uh, or no, it was like the recordings. I wasn't keeping the recordings, so it was only on LinkedIn Live, which is not a great place to go find old stuff. Right. So I started getting recorded. I started, transcribing things. Right. And I'll say, like, you're not going to see any big view numbers here. Like, that's not what this is about. YouTube's always been a repository for the videos so that when I'm in a conversation, I can much more easily share it, with somebody, from YouTube than I do from LinkedIn. Uh, so, um, let's see here. Max Cohen, like, thanks so much for believing from the beginning. And obviously, if anybody knows how to press play, it's Max. We got excited about Event Happily. So, like, all right, let's build. Let's build in public. Like, let's show people what's going on, how to set it up, why they're failing at event management right now. Right. So Max did 4 shows with me. Um, And then HubSpot Academy Week, right? We got Academy Certification Week. We got that coming up at the beginning of May, right? I filled up the week with, you know, Jorge from Georgia's team, Jorge Fuentes. After sharing my journey, right? It wasn't always about the products. Again, it's about sharing the journey so other people can learn in new ways and just learn from a different lens. Again, so much of this is just hearing the conversation from a new voice, from a new perspective. Sometimes that's the unlock, right? So some great shows that week with Jorge Fuentes, Adam Stahl, Christopher Nault, and Cody Lopez, who's shown up a few times for me, also on the Profoundly Kickoff event a couple weeks ago, talking about how to keep up, and giving some advice that he wished he had as he learned and grew into the RevOps director, the director of RevOps that he is. Um, and it was a great week, right? Uh, so thanks to those people for joining, and then did some more shows with Max. Another opportunity to work with George that he took me up on, customer platform hug that we did a few episodes last year, trying to figure out and experiment with new ways to share knowledge, right? We're both big advocates of the customer platform concept. Uh, so we took the time to, to share the announcement, right? Mentioned Alexia showing up, talking about a really important topic of the balance of HubSpot and ERP. I learned a lot from watching Alexia grow into a digital operations manager, right? That actually owns both systems, which is super rare that people own ERP and HubSpot. And that's why her title is different, right? Like so much of like her title, digital operations manager, um, goes beyond the usual revenue operations, right? Because so much of revenue operations stops at sales and marketing, right? Why? Like it makes no sense. It's because it's coming from that group of people from the CRM that like is used to stopping at closed one, right? So if you are, when you can own both sides of that fence, HubSpot and ERP, you're in a much better position, like to serve the organization. So that's a topic I was happy to talk about. Uh, Here we got to announce Salim's and the change to our business, right? As Salim moved to the elite partner space, right? We also didn't hold back on our experience as HubSpot partners, right? As small partners in an ecosystem built for elite. So we got to again just share openly, honestly, you know, the good and the bad. Cameron Collins, doing a great job, helping Sprocketeer grow uh, as the community manager. He's launched something awesome, the admin arena, which I look forward to seeing. He just announced the 10 people involved there. Uh, and then obviously interspersed here, like when I don't have people on, right, I get to talk about like this 4-part series of Hi, Commerce Hub. Hi, everybody. Commerce Hub exists. There's a bunch of objects that you don't know about that exist in HubSpot. Take a minute to run people through that for a week. Um, Even stepping outside the HubSpot ecosystem for a moment. Joseph Lewin, he was doing some stuff to help people, grow on LinkedIn to do content, right? So I wanted to get his voice out there, and he's grown that into something special. Uh, yeah, Stuart Balcom, um, one of the bigger brands in the ecosystem, I think, like had a major change, in his life. I was like, hey man, like let me help you get the word out, so you don't have to worry about what's next. So he got on and did a few episodes, which was a ton of fun, and even just being in a spot where, hey, all is that I'm showing up every day. Right? I think I was recently on the list from Clemens. Uh, so it wasn't hard to say like, "Hey, man, I know you show up every day. Like, let's just get you. Let's have an episode where you can share what you want to share. Help you through this transition." Uh, so after about a quarter of doing that on my own, I went into the tank and said, like, okay, how can we how can we grow this to the next level? It can't just be me, because I'm just one guy. So how can we get other people to step up? And what I did was at the time I had created a channel um, about for individual consultants because during this transition, uh, where it was I went on my own, I'm like, okay, this place isn't really built. This ecosystem isn't really built for solo acts, right? It's pretty hard. Um, so created a channel on Sprocketeer, individual consultants are gathering feedback. And in that channel, uh, what like ideating a lot of the ways like, okay, could HubSpot coach be a partner type? Like, how can we like create a space for the people and support the people that are out there doing the work to help the people that don't need to buy more HubSpot and they don't need people to build it for them necessarily. So if you're in the ecosystem at that time as a partner, like you have to level up by selling HubSpot and managing HubSpot, so sold points and managed points, right? Well, there's a lot of people that need help without those things, like people that need their data model right? Which is where I focus and where I love helping people. There's no points for that, right? And the triage that you got to do when there's bad onboardings and bad migrations and just people that aren't set up for success. The partner ecosystem does not incentivize you to take care of those people, right? And it's understandable as the HubSpot shoots up market and just grows grows imaginably, I'll say, like, it should be growing like this. It's the best platform to build a business on, like, period. Uh, but you need a strategic layer of business success, focused on business success, not just functional success of the product. So I went in and we started talking to people, and, at some point, I asked, I was like, "Okay, who who would show up?" If they just had to show up once a week uh, to talk about something they're passionate about. And people raised their hand. Brian Osa, Madeline Donovan, Stuart was already showing up. Matthew Ruxton, Daniel Urban, uh, Joshua Oakes, Casey raised her hand, but we never got to it. Thankfully, we're here this year, and she's been showing up every day. And then Will and Bruce. Um, to talk about onboarding, like still an issue. And it's been so much fun. I look forward to getting back to that show with him because he gets to share a whole new side from the pre-sales solutions team over at HubSpot. Um, he's been awesome, and this is like you know behind the scenes of this, right? How are Willem and I even connected in a way where he's not an individual consultant. He was not in the group, right? So that was from like, okay, people are having bad experiences onboarding, right? I don't remember how it came to pass, but uh, we knew each other simply from having both. Uh, it was not awkward, Casey. Don't worry. You knew your stuff. That's the thing. Like, you can't be awkward. It's pretty hard to be awkward when you can just unlock the passionate topic that you help people with all the time, or it's from the conversation you just had, which I think a lot of that email conversation we had was based on. Um, but yeah, so you're good. You're fine. It's probably more me just hating talking about email. It's probably why I didn't try so hard to like get a regular show going with you, for being honest. Um, uh, and Matthew, yes, I appreciate the kind words. We do, we do need to get back to the basics of building HubSpot properties. Um, uh, yeah, so all these people, start showing up just because say, hey, just show up. But it always took the first one to say, like, okay, can we really pull this off without prep? And that 15 minutes before the show, um, was all the prep needed, right? We talk about what was on our minds, and in some cases, like Mr. Oaks has never shown up unplanned, unprepped. Like, uh, he's got his shit together, so to speak. And it's been fun. Like, it's not like you can't do that, right? If you have the space for that and you can support, like, we never went daily or weekly, with his shows. We've always been bi-weekly, and that's okay. It's just like the consistent cadence. When you come up with this stuff, right? Just understand that the more prep you put as an expectation, it's becomes impossible to show up every day, right? Um, so you just have to find a cadence that you can hit, right, with the level of prep that you want to do. Because with a lot of these shows, even like before I asked for the hand raisers here, like several guests are like, okay, I'm gonna build some stuff, we'll show it. And we get to the episode, and it's like, I haven't built anything. Like, and that's okay, because now we just get to talk about it from a new angle. We're building stuff. Hey, this is supposed to work in your portal. It doesn't, because we haven't pressed the leads button yet. Right. And that reminds me, how could I forget? One of the highest, um, one of the most popular set of shows was Leads and Life Cycles with Emerson McCune, where that was like just a hot topic, and it still is. People still don't know when to use a leads object and when's not to. Um, but it was so fun to like, and this started with, I think it was a February March conversation stemming from Sprocketeer, right? And you start ideating, how can we show up together? Uh, how can we create regular workshops for people to talk about stuff, right? And we did one like behind closed doors. I think there was four of us, me, Emerson, Cameron, and I'm so sorry I can't remember the fourth person. Feel free to raise your hand and call me out if you know who you are. Um, but it's probably Casey, I'm guessing. Like, if I had to guess. Um, uh, that's the one thing, Casey. Like, even though we never got to a scheduled event, you were always there for the unscheduled stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure. Whenever we were trying to get stuff going in Sprocketeer, like whether it was just one or two of us, you pop your head in. So I always appreciated that. Stuff like that just goes such a long way, right? Just showing up for people, showing up for the community. Um, so getting this going, as I got this going, turned into Let's Build Media, and um, I realized I had to take it like to the next level. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? It's not just me anymore. I can't necessarily roll out of bed 5 minutes before the show starts and just do it, right? Which was hard for me, but worth it. Like, you know, there's an element to ADHD where when you commit to something and it's on your calendar, like that's how it gets done. Like, period. Um, but what I did was I went back and I took all of my transcripts, my single transcripts, and I asked GPT for help building, the theme, the narratives, the tone attributes, and it nailed it. Like, I'm not seeing all that here, but then it also nailed like this, the goals of Let's Build. Right? Are you feeling overwhelmed by HubSpot's rapid evolution? You're not alone. You're still not alone. We're still in 2025 and everybody's overwhelmed. As HubSpot transforms into a full-fledged customer platform, many users and partners are struggling to keep up. That's where Let's Build Media comes in. Now, that framing, many users and partners, right? The entire ecosystem, including the HubSpot team, is struggling to keep up with the product. So good luck targeting people in that massive chasm that are behind, right? It doesn't matter what your job title is, doesn't matter how long you've been in the ecosystem, doesn't matter, what you're focused on, what industry niche you're in. You can be using a different tool in HubSpot than everybody else is. And then when you ask for help, you can't find anybody because everybody's so focused on marketing and sales, right? And somebody using Marketing and Sales Hub by itself is just amazingly different from somebody who's using Marketing and Sales Hub and Invoices, right? Because immediately we go from lead gen and sales process to full customer lifecycle, right? And that changes the conversation. So much of this was just creating the space to let's talk about everything we can, whatever we see in front of us every day, whoever's the expert that can speak to that topic, and create a space to have these shows, to have these conversations that go where they need to go and are not like so contrived because we got to feed the algorithm or we need leads, right? So much of this is just so much of the value has been from just deciding that it's education first. We're closing the knowledge gap. I'm not creating some pipeline off of this, even though one has been created, right? And by the way, got to help launch a new company, right? So don't look past that when it comes to ROI, right? So much of the Profoundly launch and its existence is based on all these relationships that were built while creating content. The value first framework that I'm going to introduce tomorrow and a lot of my insights have all been developed through creating this content, through feeling strongly about my own views, but having other people that feel strongly about their views and not always, aligning. I joke with Casey all the time. Like, I want lead scoring to die yesterday. I think it's not great. like, and like in a couple days, we're going to talk about the leads trap. A couple days after that, it's the lead magnet trap, right? Of why I feel it's not great. But I also know that there's a bunch of people like the status quo is the status quo. And I don't have to be the guy that, serves it directly. But if I can help others educate on it, I'm happy to do that. I don't know if happy's right. I could, I'm happy to help other people help other people, right? At the end of the day, that's how we all get better, right? We don't always have to agree on best practices. But if we know there's people out there needing help with a specific topic, like I'd rather get it out there than saying like I know best and I'm never gonna talk about this thing. Like that's why I did the shows with Emerson. I was like, I'm not ever gonna touch, this thing. But there's a lot of people struggling with leads object right now. So let's start to talk to them. Let's start to help them. So, big milestone getting this off the ground. And what can I cover in 13 minutes? Uh, just go down the line here. So it was about 60 shows, I think, in that Q2. Or actually, it was out of here, right? So 58. And that was only what I uploaded to YouTube. Um, so actually, about 70, I guess, in Q2 of last year, with the first couple weeks included of LinkedIn Lives. Then we switched over to, let's build media stuff and just unloaded the value, right? So here's the onboarding show with Willem Roos and getting to watch some of the evolution as you help, like OGs like Tony Dowling, right? It started with let's build your strategy into HubSpot because it was about HubSpot not being the strategy. right? Eventually, we moved into what we have today, and what I look forward to getting back to soon. Is let's build HubSpot adoption, right? Because that's actually the heart of what we are trying to accomplish. And having these shows, gaining the first party feedback, right? Existing in the community, in the conversation is what helps you create the message that you need because you know it resonates and you don't have to do a bunch of homework behind the scenes, right? um, and it's not that we're just indulging ourselves. Maybe there's a little bit of that and just showing up in a way that we want to show up. But it's also very much showing up in the place that everybody else is and already talking, right? You just start to use the words that make sense when you talk about the new words or the old words and you talk about them in new ways, since it's in the context of the conversation already happening and not some like predetermined path of a campaign. And if they get this word, then they'll go over here and then they'll fill out a form. And then we're going to annoy them with some sales conversations. Like it's just a different motion, right? And it's the last motion, in my opinion, that is untouched by AI, right? Showing up every day, showing and telling your skills, your thoughts, your experiences, your passion that connects you to other human beings in a way that AI cannot, right? And even when it does get it, and in some cases it's already better than you at empathy and things that it knows it needs to do to support humans. Not every human is good at humaning, like in case you haven't like been around. uh so don't hate on AI too much with all these human based qualities that we think are just not possible. It knows the math, it knows emotional math just like it knows all the other math, right? But it doesn't have to replace, like, we'll just be side by side with it, right? And that's how you're gonna be able to show your value. That's one of the only ways, especially when it comes to HubSpot expertise, is like like I said, like, it's so hard to know based on title, based on, any of these usual demographics, um, of where you are, what industries you serve, how long you've been in the ecosystem, even which hubs. Um, there's people that the way people talk about Service Hub, and I'm getting down a tangent. Either way, like the best way to find out what somebody knows about HubSpot and what their value can be in a relationship with you if you need help with HubSpot is by seeing it. And instead of waiting to pay them or waiting for the long discovery call and the long process, when you create content like this, you can build that trust beforehand, right? Um, so uh, started up a show with Lucy, and this was after talking to the community team at HubSpot. Like, hey, who else do you think would show up? Right? I don't know everything. I don't like not everybody's in Sprocketeer. I don't have access. Like, and Sharon from the community team at HubSpot. Great conversation with her. She mentioned Lucy. Gives one message to Lucy saying, "Hey, this is what I'm up to. You want to join?" And she was in. Right. Um, so carried that through the year. Did have done over 400 shows since starting on March 18th. Um, End of the year, I was at 12, I think 12 weekly shows per day. One of the most important ones, Let's Build Superhumans with George B. Thomas, uh, which was never the plan for George, right? And here's all of the other regular shows that we did. Uh, And if I can just show, like, when I asked George, this is like, hey, like it resonated with me that everywhere I've been and the places I'm still listening to, Things like this are what get in the way of, HubSpot success. Like all these non-HubSpot things, right? And in this case, he was approaching it from, it was self-help or it was like professional growth, personal growth. And then as soon as I asked the question, let's do it on the show, like it unlocked the professional growth side of things, right? So it was an amazing series to go through. But at the end of the day, um, I I found myself wondering. I was like, "Guys, is this another framework that makes way too much damn sense, only to run into the wall that is leaders don't know how to change?" Because no matter how much we talk about, working together and uh, growth and even story brand, they ask you answer like from 2017. I tried to bring this stuff into organizations. And when you run into stuff, and this has happened even in the ecosystem as well, obviously. Um, when you run into stuff like, I don't know, like I love it. I love that idea, but our sales compensation works a certain way. We've got KPIs to hit. I don't know how to unravel that as a leader. That's a major thing. Like, it doesn't matter how commonsensical the thing is that you put in front of them, it can't get past that wall. And I get it. So I started going hard, like on like, okay, how how do we help? Right. And I'd been thinking about organizational change and just org structures for a while because so much is due to the label on your hat of marketing, sales, customer service, ops. When you show up to your colleague, that means a certain thing, whether you want it to or not. That sends the message. So, long story short, as we wrap up, um, I started developing uh, the value first framework, which I'm going to be sharing tomorrow. Start sharing tomorrow as the path, like a path that you can take that will allow you the space to do all of this stuff that people are telling you is great and you feel is great, whether it be a new app, a new agent, a new way of treating people inside your organization, outside of your organization. I think this is a path you can go down that allow you to do those things. Like, and it's gonna be a little bit of burn it to the ground. Like marketing, sales, all these labels that we're used to from the industrial age mindset does not support the age of AI. And it introduces a lot of complexity. I talk about it all the time on our AI shows. And if I feel strongly about almost any view related to AI, it's the fact that it will not stand for any unnecessary complexity. And when you break down B2B and SaaS, man, the world we live in right now, it's almost entirely unnecessary complexity. And tomorrow, I'm going to start sharing why I think that way with all of the traps, like uh, uh, the AI replacement trap is what we're starting with tomorrow. Then we'll go into the leads trap, right? Uh, and I'm not going to list them all right now. I'll share them later today, or at least tomorrow, as a preface, because it's powerful stuff. And if you think it's common sense, it really is. So now it's about how we change. How do we change and leverage AI while not forgetting about all the people that got us here and all the people that are providing value every day in the grind that could provide a different level of value in abundance when we switch gears from scarcity to abundance. Um, so I thank everybody for joining me on the journey. We're just getting started, a year in, and it's going to be an exciting 2025. Uh, so as I go through this series, let's build value first. So talk about all these 10 pillars that we're going to go through. Create this path. I hope you can join me. Find the opportunity and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.